stream. But for safety's sake, don't say anything nasty. See if I can get my computer to actually. There we go. And we will go to there. Beautiful, beautiful. Now it's working. As you can tell, Josh, I am still. There we go. Music is live, or voice is live.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, cool. Volume's down. We'll turn this over to here, and we will go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to BattleComm Unity. It's our weekly Sunday night show that we're going to start focusing on new Battletech news releases from our community around the world, community events, tournaments, other YouTubers, anything positive news that can be spread as far as everybody doing their part as ambassadors for Battletech and growing this game that we all love and enjoy. Tonight with me, as usual, I am going to have our co-host Paul Henny Henderson, and as well with him Joe Becker, if you guys are up on the screen there. And tonight we will also have our special guest, Alpha Strike rules developer guru, Force Manual developer guru, writer, all things Battletech, master unit list, Josh Franklin. So welcome to the show, Josh.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
So tonight, I'm going to pass things over to Henny. We're going to go over a few news tidbits from things we following up from last week, and then we will get right into the heart of things with the cool new Force manuals. You can see them here on the table. We also got the Universe book and a couple of new Force packs to go over tonight. So with that said, I will put things over to Henny and Joe.
Hi there, folks. This is Paul 2.0, or as I'm better known, a Henny, or I guess maybe I'm the 2C variant. We haven't quite figured out how big an upgrade. I just want to quickly recap, since we were talking last week about the SLDF Assault Lance. We have one here with us in the studio. That is this fine dandy little piece here. We have, once again, Prince Victor's Direwolf Prometheus. What needs to be said about that is pretty much nothing. It's one of the most iconic mechs in the universe, and it is, of course, an Omni-mech, so it changes up enough that we can't say too much about it. We also have the Argus here, which is another thing that threw back to me to my youth with MechWarrior 4. It's just a nifty little Davion 60-ton cavalry unit. Again, it has a lot of newer tech to it, like MRMs and racks, although my personal favorite is the B variant that is just an ERPPC and a couple of LRM-15s, which is absolutely scary on a 60-ton chassis.
Oh my god.
And then we have the Helios. The Helios is really cool looking in mini form. The art on the website doesn't quite do it justice, as it's from before the redesign. So I do just want to get the Helios out of the package and show it off to you guys. What this thing is another 60-ton cavalry-ish unit. It's a 464 in most of its incarnations, not all of them jump. What this was a St. Ives compact mech. The St. Ives compact being kind of like Space Taiwan. They're kind of a cool split off from the compact. They have a mix of, Confederation. They have a mix of Confederation mechs, so they're usually on the lighter end, but they actually, because of what's produced in their realm and their Davion support, have a fair amount of expensive higher-end assault mechs like the Pillager and Emperor in their forces. So this guy was made to be basically a bodyguard for them. It packs a Gauss rifle in its main configuration, 2 SRM-6s, and a pair of ER medium lasers, which for 3058 era fat medium is pretty scary. Beyond that, we have the coolant truck, something that I have been waiting for with bated breath because I am all over as a GM having unit markers and things for my players to contest.
And blow up.
And blow up, yes. War crimes are something our table does kind of enjoy, and that could also be a fuel truck as opposed to a coolant truck. We have the Emperor, which is this gentleman that kind of looks like the Michelin man wearing football pads. Pretty cool mech. Once again, I've described it before as being a bit of an updated take on the Crockett that actually came out around the same time as the original Crockett, and battles the Highlander for the distinction of being the first true 90-ton jump-capable mech. And I think that kind of just recaps that lance for us that we've wanted to go over. We've also got some other cool Gen Con finds here on the table. We have our various drop ships that are map scale. The Union, Excalibur, and Overlord, I believe, are the three.
I'll go switch the camera angle there to that. And there we go. So you guys can see them there on the screen. So those are all map scale drop ships. They don't scale to the exact same as the actual miniatures for the game. So when you're playing it, they're good for hex maps. The detail on these is phenomenal, though. I put these together today. Bring it up a little closer. Tommy brought these back from Gen Con. They are fantastic models. I can't wait to get them painted up so we can put them on the stream for everybody.
Yeah, they are a very little bit some assembly required.
Yeah, just you glue the legs on. Other than that, these things are a 10 out of 10. Like, they're fantastic. I'm very impressed with them. I was skeptical about them myself when I first heard about them, and I saw them, got them in my hand today, and they are absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to touch base on about the Star League Command Lance that we talked about last week?
The Starleague Command Lance, I think we've kind of gone over it enough. We've got Alexander Kerensky's Orion. We have the Devlin Stone, or at least the Atlas II, which Devlin Stone is probably the most notable pilot of. You have the Thunderhawk, which I like one thing about, and that is that this is Adam Steiner's mech. Once he gets tired of the Axeman, he pilots through the terrible cartoon. That is a big part of my childhood. And the Phoenix Hawk 2C, Phoenix Hawk Special. Sorry.
No, it's a great mech. It's one of the, it's a Comstar staple. I believe it's a Clan staple early on.
Oh yeah.
It's the special, the 1B special is a mech I really like using.
Yeah, I really like it. I like the sculpt for it, and I'm glad to have it as my little Comstar surprise narc carrier in my games. The other thing I wanted to point out too while we're talking about these lances is we actually have the first one of the battlefield support cards that came out with the vehicle pack with that fuel truck. And I was hoping that Josh, being here, would give us a little rundown on what some of these numbers mean.
Oh, well, I'm going to go here, switch screens. Sorry, guys. There we go.
With the BSP pack. If Josh is still with us.
Still there, Josh?
I'm still here. I dropped out a little bit there. So what was the... I can't even read the numbers there.
Okay.
Well,
We were just going over, since this is the first time we've had a BSP card printed out for us with the coolant truck, we were just asking what the battlefield support with the numbers on the mean with the ranges and skill modifiers, if you wanted to go over that being one of the designers.
Sure. I can go over what the number means. I was not one of the designers on Keith Hahn and Randall.
Okay.
Were the designers for all the battlefield support. They asked my opinion a couple times, but that's not all my involvement. But let's see, let me pull one up real quick. Battlefield support cards. Oh, those are the wrong ones. Well, if you want to read off one of the numbers while I'm what the label is, I'll explain what that one is.
Well, I mean, it's got its range categories in 1, 2, 3 with the coolant truck. The skill, we know what it does. The damage, we know what it does. And the check, which is basically, that is kind of like its invuln role, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about the battlefield assets is that the skill and the range modifiers are used, but attacker movement modifiers are not used, and you don't calculate a target movement modifier. You know, did it move 4 hexes? It gets a +1.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like Alpha Strike in that the target movement modifier is just listed. As
Yeah.
long as it doesn't do indirect fire where it has to stand still, it gets it, and you don't have to worry about did it use flanking movement or cruising movement. You just do the skill plus the range plus whatever, if they have woods or something. The damage is a number of 5-point clusters. It does, so all the battlefield assets do 5-point clusters.
Yep.
So if it says 2, you just roll 2 locations, do 5 damage to each. And then the check is going to be, there's a threshold. They have to take so much damage. And then there's a check. You roll 2d6, and if it's
above that
it's higher,
7, it
it's
just
destroyed.
evaporates, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you make a check and it survives, then you lower the check by 1 for the next time.
Okay.
So it will get, you can chip at it if you're sitting there attacking one of those assault tanks and it's going to make that check. You can knock it down. But
You're not just gonna
also
keep
the
hoping for
threshold, if
boxcars.
you do 10 extra damage or 20 extra damage, you get a bonus to the roll. But you
Alright.
don't track it took 30 damage last turn and now it took 20 this turn. So you don't track the damage between turns. It's just, okay, next turn, try again.
Okay. So it kind of rinses and repeats. Fair enough. We'll move on and look at the 3rd SLDF Striker Star, which is, they're calling it the SLDF. It's basically the Ill Clan being the Ill Clan. Nobody in universe actually has, to my knowledge, at any point used the term 3rd SLDF. But we're going to take a quick look at the mechs in it. So that Striker Star is coming out. We're not quite sure on the date, unless you'd like to elaborate for us, Josh.
Oh, no, definitely not on date.
Okay. I didn't think so. I was hoping to get a little insider information, but I think somewhere Q4 is probably the best I was possibly going to get there. All right, so I'll give you a quick rundown of the mechs in it. You've got the Jackalope.
So we have the Jackalope, which is not to be confused with the Jackrabbit, which is a mistake I keep making. It's a Republic era and Republic made mech, Republic of the Sphere. Meant to be a scout mech and a dropship support mech that actually exists in one of my favorite weight brackets, which is the 35-ton laser boat, where very easily spammable. It's in there with another light mech, which is more of a generous successor in the Havoc.
Yeah.
This is the laser boat. The Jackalope is a scout in and of itself. It's the Havoc that packs the 4 ER medium lasers from the same era.
Yeah, the Jackalope is a laser boat in a way, as that it's one of the more prolific uses of the laser AMS. It's supposed to be a leap forward in anti-missile technology.
Yes, that's the other little quirk about it that I got mixed up.
Semi-interesting.
Well, I do like that kind of technology. I don't like packing AMS because it blows up way too often.
We've also got the Lament in that pack. The Lament is one of the few things that, in an era that I generally have to take a reacting to play in because I'm slightly allergic to some of the later eras, I'm really looking forward to. It's got a lot of the hardiness that I love in my beloved Thunderbolt, and it's got a kind of Warhammery mix of weapons with 2 heavy PPCs, which are some awesome head cappers, and a trio of medium lasers, at least in the original standard configuration. It's one of the more standout mechs from the Republic, which is why they chose to name it after Stone's Lament.
It's also one of the mechs, me being an old school player myself and still learning these days to get into the new eras. It's got some of the best artwork for a new mech out there. It really caught my eye when I saw some of the pictures posted of it. The ones that came out for the Universe book, I was like, wow, what is that? And I want to see this miniature. And then I double checked and looked and saw it was coming out of this. I'm like, okay, this is a cool miniature. I'm gonna want to put this on the table. I'm gonna want to paint this. I'm gonna want to play with it, right?
Not to mention the cool 2-foot high sculpt they had at Gen Con.
That's correct. When I saw that double page artwork released with the art, I was just like, oh, okay, I love this mech. This mech is fantastic. This is gonna get that kind of stuff is gonna get older guys like me that might have been hesitant for a long time to get into the newer eras. right in there, along with things like the Universe book and the next thing we're going to talk about, the Force manuals. The Force manuals are something I've been looking forward to for a very, very, very long time. Anything that's a game aid for BattleTech, I am a huge proponent for. Now that we got all these wonderful miniatures out there, assets to assist players to play the game and build armies and create lists and access and reference rules are all huge things for expanding and growing the game. With that said, Josh, I want to right out straight up nerd fanboy, thank you for help getting this out there and being a spearhead, the tip of the spear on this. I love source books. I love game aids, and this is just it's the thing I've been waiting for. Besides the Universe book for a very long time. That said, I'm going to pass it over to Henny and Joe. Henny and Joe are going to go over some of the things you can do with the Force manuals, and of course, then they're going to ask Josh some questions on their interpretations of how the Force manuals actually work.
Before we go any further, are we taking questions from the chat right now?
Yeah, we can take questions from the chat at any time. Anybody who wants to ask a question?
We just have one from Randall Burt here that asks if the dropships will be retail. I'm almost certain they will be.
Yeah. So that's a question I can't answer. I don't work for Catalyst. Okay. They were sold at Gen Con, so I'm assuming at some point they will be released. I know they were getting delivered as part of Kickstarter purchases as add-ons. That doesn't mean they were part of the Kickstarter. That means it was an add-on. So I'm guessing, probably you'll see stuff hitting stores sometime in the next month or two for releases. Okay?
So the Force manuals.
Yeah. So I've taken a look at them. I was poring over them quite a bit on the way in, actually. I am really looking forward to, and I've mentioned this before, having something like we used to have with the rat tables. And these Force manuals have that. It's got a nifty little chart on tucked away in here on page 81.
Of that manual.
Of not the Davion one that
No.
I picked up.
So there are two at the moment.
We're to deal with Force Manual Kurita to start.
Yeah.
Yes, we skipped Davion. I apologize. We'll get back to them, I promise. It's just because I happened to mark my page numbers on this one. So what I want to talk about is having the rarity table. So with the Force construction designs in this, it has a rarity like the MUL used to, or like the rat tables used to. What this means is your force is able to select a certain number of various units, and there are drop downs for what all of these units are with optional alternates later on in the book. But here, I think is the most important place to start is just going on what the different rarities mean. So in the book, an iconic unit, so that would be, say, the Vindicator to the Capellans, has no limit.
Panther to the Curians,
Panther to the
Centurion for the Davions, that kind of thing.
The Enforcer to the Davions, the Assault Mechs to the Steiners. No, not quite. An iconic unit has no limit and may be selected as many times as the player wishes for their force. You're going to have common units. Common units are units that are, well, basically just that. They're common, but they're not constant. You can have up to 4 of them in your company. You can have up to 4 of them in your company, and there is no limit on how many you can, you can have up to 4 of each chassis, and there's no limit on how many of those you can have. So if you wanted to go the old Star League route and build a lance that is entirely a monomech lance, which actually back here on page 109 there is special rules for, which is a Draconis Combine only item called the Order Lance that moves all with its own specific mech.
So, like, all dragons or all...
Yeah, all dragons, things of that nature. The Iconics, if you're really a big fan of the Iconics, you can pull a Mercer Ravanian and go with the Horde Lance, which is another Combine only, which allows you to have between 5 and 10 mechs to a Lance. That would be your Wasp, Stinger, Locust spam. After that, you get into the Uncommons, of which you can have a pair, and the rares, which you only get 1
So with these, when you get a pair would be a pair of mechs for your force, and your force can be of any size, but it's limited to your force. Am I correct on that, Josh? From what I've read on it, so if you have a lance, you can have one rare in your lance. If you have a company, you can have one rare in your company.
Yes.
Or if you have a regiment, you can have one rare in your regiment. I believe, is that correct, Josh?
The rarities are all designed around being per company.
Oh, per
So
company.
if
Okay,
you were
okay.
to, so, but the rare is you can only have one of that. So if I'm trying to think of one. If your grasshopper is rare, even if you have a regiment, you're only allowed to have one grasshopper. But you could have one rare per company. They just
Okay.
couldn't
they
have
also-
multiple grasshoppers.
If I understand correctly, they also count against the uncommon unit cap, whereas you can only have about a third of your force being uncommon or rare.
Yeah. So you can have two. Trying to think of a random uncommon, a rifleman for Kurita, probably at best uncommon. But you can have two of them in your company, but your whole force can't be more than a third uncommon. So you could have two of the riflemen, one of the grasshoppers, whatever, getting to the 4 mechs out of that company being uncommon. So it forces you to have some that are common and iconic.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I really like about the force manuals, when I read through them the last couple of nights, is their presentation for new players. They are very easy reads. Essentially, the way it broke down, as Henny was explaining, is that a force is built based off of what you see in campaign operations or other game aids, referring to like maybe a battle lance or to a fire support lance or to a command lance. And what the book will do is it will show you that faction's four most common mechs that would usually be seen in that type of formation or lance. And then underneath it, it will have 3 eras. And one of the things with these force manuals are the first wave of them are late succession wars, early clan invasion, late clan invasion. There will be 3 lists of alternate substitutes that you can easily slip seat in to that lance or formation without altering the formation's base core rules or requirements, so it can maintain all its special abilities and bonuses that it would get if you're using those rules. If you're not using those rules, it's great too, because it's giving you narrative list building, and you can take that out and you can play much more accurate games with an easy find for new players. It's literally also good for a new player goes out and buys Game of Armor Combat. A lot of the times they want to go and buy force packs, and when players go and buy those force packs, they don't know what mechs to get or what force packs they're going to have to buy, and they just buy what they think looks cool, and then a month or two down the road they've painted everything up and they go to play on their first event and they go to try to build a list, and they realize like 4 or 5 of those mechs that they have can't meet the requirements for the tournament, and that's frustrating. And it's hard for a player to just dig up that information with 40 years worth of source books out there. This kind of tool makes it open up the book. There's literally only 3, maybe 3.5 pages worth of rule addendums as to how this works. It's such a simple read, and then you're right into these lists, and the person can just look at it and bam, there it is. I can have this, I can have that, I can have this because I like this color scheme. And on top of that, you have all the combat commands inside the book, and those combat commands, they have the unit insignias, they have color schemes for almost all of them, or at least for the major ones, and they give you painting tutorials. This stuff is, I love it. I absolutely love it. With that, I'm going to pass back over to Henny and Joe for a few questions there.
Yeah, as a games master, I actually really love that we have these different time periods set up, because I like to spread my mini campaigns out over era, and this is just a really solid way to lock them in. The other thing I like about this, as Paul mentioned, we have the combat commands, and that gives us different little bits of unit building. Some of the units are going to have specializations to them. So environmental specialization. So I'm going to look at the Shin Legion because it's just one that I really enjoy. It's former Capellans that go over for a time and defect to the Combine and eventually kind of end up coming back. They have an environmental specialization for clear, which is fairly obvious. They're combating in clear weather conditions, excuse me, and they have a tactical specialization for defense. They also have certain rules for some of the unit constructions that are unique to the different forces. In the case of the Shin Legion, them being formerly Capellan, they have access to some common Capellan mechs, and they can also treat the Vindicator as an iconic unit, despite being mostly Kurita throughout the span of this force manual. The cool thing I really like too seeing here, and part of the reason I said I chose to pull up the Shin Legion, is there are unique character mechs and pilots that are associated with some of the units. So this one gives us Emma Wu, who is a Thunderbolt pilot. First off, I've said this before, a Thunderbolt favorite mech. I'm going to say it for the second time in the stream. But I just wanted to showcase the fact that each unit will have their own special pilots. And then at a later part in the book, there are special pilots that are not unique to a specific unit, but are unique to each faction, like House Kurita.
Yeah, which is cool. Yeah.
So I really like the way that plays out. That gives us a great source of characters for game building to play on. I do have a few questions for Josh, though, and I think Joe is going to go on a few of his own as well.
Yeah. So, sure. You want to start us off with the first of the questions, because mine come a little later.
All right. Well, we're kind of wondering like what you think is the biggest impact the new Force manuals are going to have on the game, and both Alpha and Classic, because you were one of the primary driving forces behind Alpha, if I recall correctly, and we kind of want to know how you're expecting it's going to change the game to accomplish this,
and how it's going to affect Alpha Strike relative to Classic, because we have force construction rules that look for the most part to be agnostic between both Total Warfare and Alpha Strike. So, where are you thinking? Are there going to be any differences in how forces are constructed between the two games, or is the intention to be that they are mostly similar?
Yeah. So one of the big changes I think was switching this point of view from a game master or store presents a scenario, sort of this historical wargaming where I tell you what units you're bringing, to players, getting involved in making their own forces. And it used to be through random tables, but I don't. There's some things that are good for randomness, but I like to have the forces built ahead of time, and therefore you don't actually see the rolls or anything. So that was one of the big changes, that instead of random is presenting this rarity chart where we still get people to build a faction flavored force in a Battletech universe that is pretty open what access factions have, but we're still trying to get some sort of flavor into those to the different factions. But as far as the differences between building a force for Alpha Strike and Battletech, we are going to have in the rule books for those, like how to set up a game and stuff, and those may have different limits, like what size battle value, point value, what kind of types of units you're allowed. But all the faction flavor should be in this book, so that it shouldn't be, the Alpha Strike rule book shouldn't be telling you how to play a Davion or Kurita force. It should all be in this book, regardless of what rule system you're using.
Yeah, all right. I'm looking forward to using this for plenty of games. I'm really excited to use this for pickup games.
Yeah.
Even, Henny, like you set a point value, set a faction, and then just kind of see how it ends up.
So I do have a question to follow up on that. So with these books, as I said, the eras that they cover are the late Succession War, the early Clan Invasion, and the late Clan Invasion. We do know from what Josh and Catalyst has said in the past that there will be a PDF released for the current Ill Clan era. My question falls along the lines of how and when do you think, or what is at least the rough game plan at this point for releasing Civil War, the Blakist era, and then finally the Dark Age Republic era? How is that going to be? Is that going to be another book, Josh, or is it going to be PDFs?
The Ill Clan supplementals, like this, the original Force Manual split into Late Succession Wars, Early Clan Invasion, and Late Clan Invasion. The Ill Clan supplementals, as far as giving access to units, to mechs, is going to have 4 eras. There's going to be a Civil War, Jihad, Blackout, Dark Age, and then the Ill Clan era. So it'll list like these are the Civil War era mechs. The one thing it won't do is for the combat commands. We're not going to list combat commands that don't exist in the Ill Clan era. So if it only if it was destroyed in the Jihad era, we're not going to mention it in the Ill Clan supplemental. So based on that, we don't currently have any plans to make separate books for those eras. We've got to get through all the factions for these 2 series, the main Force manuals and the supplementals, and then we'll worry about that. It's going to be a couple years worth of work already.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the other question that I had on as far as timetable is just wondering, personally, I want to know how long or how far out roughly we are from the release of Force Manual Mercenaries, and I think I have one of the 5 total existing Periphery fans sitting next to me chomping at the bit to wonder when he's going to get the Field Manual Periphery or the Field Manual Invading Clans.
Mercenaries, we're waiting for it to go to layout. So it's
okay.
Generally very rough estimate. Once it goes to the printer, you still got 5 months out of going to the printer, and this hasn't gone to layout yet. So sometime next year.
Okay.
For Mercenaries, Force Manual Mercenaries. After that, we're going to do Invading Clans.
Yep.
And that is hopefully also going to be next year. Will be later in the year. Maybe roughly the Gen Con time frame.
Okay.
That's way too far out for anybody to take my word on that, but that's a very rough estimate. Yeah, so we haven't mentioned yet. We're vaguely planning what's coming out after that, and I will love to get to the Periphery, but we haven't said what order we're going to do after that.
I mean, it's a given that the other great houses are obviously going to receive releases at some point down the line. Liao, Merrick, and Steiner. As the world's most strident advocate for the Outworlds Alliance, I am just curious how minor realms might be handled compared to how comprehensive would the Mercenaries book be?
I mean, we do see a lot of Rashalhog in the Force Manual for Kurita, so
exactly.
They may get handled within some of the great houses too.
That's kind of what I'm getting at, yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably have the St. Ives Compact will probably be in the Liao book. Periphery, I expect to be completely separate.
Awesome.
I don't know. It'll be looking at page layouts when we actually get into details of how many pages do we need, how many regiments do they have. We debated for a while whether or not Invading Clans is going to be 1 book or 2, and we decided it's going to be 1, roughly double-sized book.
Okay. So we are getting a phone book size hardcover coming out at some point.
For the Invading Clans.
Yeah. So, in reference to with the books and how they're going to be released and what we would expect possibly in some of these books, one of the things I didn't notice in the books was a master list kind of at the end of the book that gives rarity for each of the houses available units. Is that something we'll ultimately see possibly on the new master unit list that's coming up in the next few months, whenever the release date is for that?
It will not be in the initial release of the new master unit list. Mostly the new master unit list is going to focus on the same functionality, just updating it the technology behind it and make it so that we can then expand from there. So the initial one, it's a huge priority for me to update the master unit list to that, but I don't know when or if that'll happen yet.
Is there anything you can mention about the new update to the master unit list? I've been very curious about the update. I haven't heard much myself.
The big addition is going to be record sheets for Battletech. So we've had the Alpha Strike unit cards for a long time, and we're going to have the classic Battletech record sheets on there as well.
Okay.
Some minor updates to the like the force building part of it. But that is those are my major goals with Master Unit Lists. For a long time, it was just a list of units. It was like, here's all the canon units, and I really want to get it into a tool where it is more of this for now for Alpha Strike, where this is how you prepare for a game.
Making it a one-stop shop for Classic like it is for Alpha would be absolutely amazing for the community, I think.
Be incredible.
Yeah.
I think too, the speed factor too. I've heard Josh say this before in interviews that that the original Master Unit List started as a fan project, and it's been an amazing tool, and it's part of how great our community is, right?
Yep.
Look at the lengths that people go to provide tools for their friends, right? So the speed I've heard is going to be a lot faster on the new master unit list, and you'll be able to have like multiple windows open and multiple list buildings. Is that correct, Josh?
That is definitely the major goal. Yeah.
Josh, I'm going to hijack you for a question that is not really directly relating to the field manuals, but I've kind of been wondering about for a long time. As somebody who came into this game from Classic, but has done most of my play recently, between cons and between the group that I run, teaching people how to run Alpha Strike, I kind of want to know, I want to know what gave you the inspiration or how you came up with the conversion between Alpha and Classic, and I want to know how accurately you think it transfers. Like, are there mechs that you say are way better represented in Alpha, or are there mechs that you say are way better represented in Classic?
Sure. So the original conversion came from Battle Force and was created long before I was part of Catalyst. I think Randall did a lot of them because it's back. Like Battle Force 2 came out in the FOSSA era, I believe, and had the original basis. And most of it's around the idea of 10 points of damage translates to one armor. And so most of it is pretty simple conversion. Then it gets into a lot of details of trying to go, okay, well, what about heat? What about low ammo and such? Yeah, the one thing I've always tried to get is there are things that are in there that are some more counters. So, for example, for high TMM units, we lost the pulse lasers and targeting computers and other options that sort of countered them.
Mm-hmm.
And you still got skill, if they're hard to hit.
Yeah.
Well, get good, that sort of thing. You just need to be a better shooter. That's the one thing I think we really lose in going to Alpha Strike, and we've done a lot of things like using multiple attack rolls to sort of help with that. But we continue to work on it. Mostly it's a lot of the PV balancing lately.
Fair enough. Is there any particular unit that you say stands out as like really efficient on PV or inefficient? I'm not asking you to help people metagame. I just want to know what your real, gold star and baloney prize go to.
His Alpha Strike standout?
Yes,
Yeah.
his alpha and his omega, if you really want to make wordplay a thing, Joe.
Well, the one thing people get upset about is when I do anything that might harm their dashers.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a big group that if a rule change happens, they'll go, what does that do to my dashers?
Do you have any tips to deal with their dashers? Inquiring minds want to know.
Well, artillery is the big one. Whether it's
Done.
battlefield support artillery or artillery units. I sort of want to dial that back a bit because it's gotten to the point where people actually ban artillery because they want to protect their dashers. But I would like to make sure there's some other way of dealing with those hard to hit units before we change artillery.
It still makes me sad that a dasher gets a better TMM than a Phoenix Hawk Lamb. That always. So I have no sympathy for the clan players when you go to nerf their little mech with its arms like a little T-Rex. Dirty clanners, no way. I have no sympathy. Nerf them all you want, Josh. I I approve of any nerfing of the of the swords.
I think absolutely everything about the Dasher H just makes me sad, so we don't really need to go into the 6 small heavy laser boats. But yeah. I've got one question for you too about the force manuals here. I'm just wondering how exactly I mean, I know how the experience ratings affect the forces, but how does the equipment rating affect the composition?
It's an optional rule that I added in there because I don't want to get force building to get too complicated. There's a limit of you keep piling on things and people will start going, no, I'm not going to do this. But basically, as you get to later eras, the equipment rating, if you're higher, forces you to take the current era units, and if you're really low, you have to take previous era units. So it's on top of the rarities where you have to have common and iconic. But if you're an A-rated unit, you can't, in the late clan invasion, you can't take all the original 3025 Panthers. You've got to you have to take the upgraded Panthers, at least. So that's what it is. It tells you which eras you have to select from, and the higher you are, the current era, and the lower you are, you have to go previous eras, and you can't have the new stuff.
I think it's page 82 in the Kurita field manual, and it had a lot of that, like A-rated units I think are 50-50 with the current era and the previous era, and then once you start going down, they get less ability to access these. So like C-rated units, I think it's a 25% or it's a third. I don't have it memorized yet, I'm sorry, but they're less priority, so they only get them when available, and then F-rated units are basically just ignored by the coordinator. That's your Legions of Vega, for example, except for the one that Theodore is in charge of, because nepotism.
I really like the system. I think it's going to cause some real flavor coming out with building lists.
I'll be honest with you, I'm a rarity. I am the kind of nerd who list building is probably my favorite part of this game, is actually like building lists and writing the events, and is as much a part of it for me as playing. So having this kind of at one point sandbox but not sandbox, having the different options I have but also having to strategize around it is actually something that I'm really excited to get my hands on, not just having our studio copies that belong to the group.
Yeah, and as I touched on earlier, we're out there on a regular basis as 30th Century Fox, Fox Network, doing ambassador stuff, running events at conventions, running events at local game stores, bringing the game to new players. We really put a lot of effort and time into approaching new players at events in places where it's not normally gaming, quote unquote. They're nerd culture fans. They might have played board games, and they come and see what we're doing for the first time, and we try to lure them in. And books like this are so important. The way these books are set up, it's so easy for a new player to grab that book and feel a part of something fairly quickly, and able to help make their purchases, which are going to be important for their units. And of course, the universe book that goes along with it. We can touch base on the universe book here. The way the universe book is written, and I actually messaged Ray Aristia yesterday. I read the universe book cover to cover twice in the last 3 days. And being an old school player, even though I've been back playing for 8 years now, I still spent a lot of time focused on the Succession Wars and the Clan Invasion. When I was busy with, being a dad and all that fun stuff, I missed the Civil War era. I missed the Blakist era, and I missed the Dark Age era. And when I came back, I was hesitant to try something new because, the old dogs, new tricks. I didn't, want to necessarily maybe invest the time because there's a lot of books there for me. And I've never been a fiction reader. I've always been a source book reader. I like encyclopedic type tomes to read through to get an idea, and then if I want to go down the rabbit hole, I go down the rabbit hole in depth. And when I read the Universe book, it put the story together so well, and it doesn't feel heavy and condensed. It immediately changed my opinion and approach to the most current era, which is the Ill Clan era. I'd already been getting into the Civil War era and into the Blakist era through a lot of reading, but this tied everything together really well and completely changed my opinion on it. And now I actually feel energized. This is something new that now I feel excited about. I know it's been around for a couple of years. I know they got a bunch of source books out for it. I own a bunch of them. And when I read them, I felt like I was like, okay, I don't feel attached to this. And the Universe book is a fantastic primer that made me feel attached to something new and made me understand it. It was like almost being like getting told a bedtime story, for lack of a better term. I love it. And Ray, Catalyst, everybody there, fantastic work on this book. I'll pass it over to Henny and Joe here to talk a little more, the finer points of some of the things that they like about it as well.
Yeah, I really like the Universe book as a whole. I am the kind of guy who will go down a tremendous Sarna rabbit hole if I'm allowed to. So having the Universe book was cool to read through and be able to pick out things that I would want to go down that rabbit hole for. I also found that it gave me a lot of cool ideas for events, and actually some of the stuff in the Force manuals do as well, particularly because they do mention and have some record sheets for unique hero mechs. So we're seeing stuff like the Guillotine Estridson, which is one of the Rashel Hog special mechs in there that was most likely a Comstar prototype that got accidentally delivered to the Combine and ended up in Rashel Hog, who, I'm gotta be honest with you, I have no idea who decided that anything needed that many Intersphere medium lasers. But it's really cool to be able to just look at that and be like, okay, that's going to be my hero mech. I can craft an event around that and then look at the Universe book for the broader strokes of the Ronin War and then go in and decide, okay, I'm going to set this on Shiloh or something like that, and I'm going to have the Legion of Vega or one of the A-Lags or the Shin Legion that I mentioned earlier that basically really make their mark with the Combine for the first time in the Ronin War, and being able to just pick that out of the Universe book was really cool to just see how it all ties together.
I am briefly reminded before we just get too deep into the Universe book itself. Final thought from Josh here: how big an impact were you really hoping these Force manuals were going to make on on BattleTech at large? Like, on how the game is played, how widespread the adoption of the new rules will be across all tables, across all tournaments, that kind of thing.
It's a good question because there's basically several layers of success, and one of them is just getting copies sold. And I think BattleTech's in a position right now where there's a big enough market, there's enough fans that, we could put out a book, it's BattleTech, and it will sell at this point. It's more of prioritizing which ones. But to me, the big measure of success for the Force manuals in particular is just how much it changes the way people play the game. Because there's a lot of BattleTech players that have played for a long time and they know how to play BattleTech, and they don't need to be told how to play BattleTech. And then there's new players that are coming in that are like, don't tell me I need to read 40 years of books in order to figure out how to play a game. But I want to see how much people actually use these, what parts of it they use the most, and yeah, that'll be what I'm really excited for, is is how much people actually use them in a game.
Fair. I really love the unit rundowns in them, and I got to be honest with you, as I mentioned earlier, the St. Ives Compact is one of my favorite factions. So earlier on, when you said that they were going to be included with the Capellans, I did a little happy dance internally that I will spare everybody out there watching from actually seeing, because it would be horrifying and nauseating to anybody who does not have gravel on hand.
Okay, well, we're hitting up on the hour mark here, and I know Josh has got family commitments and things he'd like to do tonight to finish off his weekend, and probably has to go back to work tomorrow, like the rest of us, except for Henny. Henny's on his weekend right now. So,
Yeah.
Josh, we really thank you for joining us tonight. It means a lot that you can come out here, talk with us. The community can hear you talking live about some of the great new products that are coming out. I think these things here, like you touched on, are going to be very impactful for the community, especially for the new players. It's intimidating for anybody coming into the game to look at 40 years worth of lore and rules and try to figure out, how you're going to get yourself involved in something that you think is cool. And it's also a lot of work for the veteran players to take those people under their wing and to help teach them the game and make them feel comfortable. And the other thing that goes along with that is that when you have an old guard of players like myself, and we're only familiar with the late succession wars, and we're only really familiar and comfortable with the clan invasion, when a new player comes along, obviously, if we're teaching them and take them under our wing, we are going to naturally expose them to those eras and not maybe necessarily to the new stuff. So those new players then get an affinity for the older things instead of the newer things. So I think this creates a situation where, yes, we can have us old guard here there to be mentors and to welcome people into the game, but this also is easy enough to read, and it is designed in a way that a new player can pick up that book, buy a game of Armored Combat, buy Alpha Strike, buy a couple of Force manuals, maybe buy the Universe book as well, get a feel for the setting, and then step off and go and do their own thing, learn it, and then show up at a game store or join a local social media group where there's other players and show up at a game and be able to play and fit in. So with that said, Josh, thank you very much. If you got any final comments, feel free to go to it.
No, thanks. And I think you hit it on the head with this is with the Universe book and the Force manuals. It's all about where can you point players to get caught up and get caught up in this universe that we all want to play in.
Okay, and Henny and Joe, any final words?
Yeah, Josh, I'm going to thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do that. I'm going to thank you for your hard work on these books as well. As somebody who is a game master, I am really excited to have this new tool in my arsenal to build a little bit more balanced forces and a little more historically accurate forces. And also, as somebody who likes building lists, I like that it's going to be a little bit of a challenge sandboxing me on some of this stuff. So I'm going to be like, these are something I am more excited about than almost all of the new reams of gray plastic that are hopefully eventually making their way to my mailbox, except maybe the Dervish. But yeah, I just really thank you for the hard work you've done on this. And I got to mention too, shout out to Eldon Cowger and to Bishop and to Scroggins for the art and the mech designs. They have turned out really well, both in the books and in a lot of the miniatures.
Okay, with that, everybody, thank you again for joining us. We'll see you again Friday night for Friday Night Aces. We promise that we will have a full game, unlike the problem we had this Friday. We do apologize for that. And then again next Sunday at 7 o'clock. Events coming up for us. Again, we will be at Fan Expo August 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th. We will be running the Havoc and Harlock 2 scenario, which is going to be a Battletech Aces inspired scenario that is working off of the short story written by Paul Jardin, if I'm mispronouncing his name, Shajardin, a nice cool
Shajardin.
dish about the final battle between Jamie Wolf and Wayne Waco. I'm a huge Waco Rangers fan, so obviously that weighed heavily on what we're doing. But aside from that, if you do have any of your own events going on out there, feel free to drop us an email at foxnetwork@gmail.com. We will be glad to discuss that and endorse it here and get that message out there for your own stuff. And again, thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and we will see you on Friday. Have a good night.